Okay, hi. So, although we covered this topic in the first adaptation video, we're going to go into a bit more detail now into adaptations which are found in plants. Okay, so unlike animals, plants, you will barely ever find plants in icy Arctic conditions. They can't store fat like animals can, and also they rely so heavily on water, and water freezes at that temperature that it's just not viable for them to grow. So cold places do not allow plants to grow. Another place on the planet where plants cannot grow but animals can is very, very deep in the ocean. And that's because really deep in the ocean, certain fish have adapted to survive the pressure and the lack of sunlight. But plants, bearing in mind they need to photosynthesize, cannot survive down there because down at the bottom of the ocean, there is zero sunlight getting there. It's all been blocked out. Okay, so pretty much everywhere else though on the planet these plants can grow, and the first thing they need to adapt in order to obtain is water. Now if we had a generic plant, let's say it looks something like this. Now a plant, its root, let's say this is the ground, it may have roots which are going really deep into the ground like this. And this would be in an environment where there was barely any water around at the top of the soil, so it's pretty dry soil. It needs to go really deep into the ground to find the water. However, if there is water around but the environment is really windy, or there are loads of other plants around as well, then the plant may adapt to have really shallow but wide spreading roots. This means that the plant is anchored where it is a way which is a lot more strong than if the roots were deep, and also it's out-competing other plants by stealing all of their water from the soil. And so that is the effect of different roots of a plant. There we go. Now if we zoom in, let's say that this is a leaf. If we zoom into a leaf, we also have features known as stomata. So singular stoma or multiple stomata. So here we have a leaf, and these holes here are known as the stomata. And that's coming from a very much zoomed in section of this leaf down here. So this is the stomata, and it's basically a pore or an opening. So a pore. So these stomata, or single stoma, they allow gas exchange. So gas exchange, and that is from respiration. Same as us, plants do need to respire. That's how they use their energy. And how they gain their energy is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis. So both photosynthesis and respiration require gas exchange. Now the stomata also allow water loss by evaporation. So when they are open, water can be evaporated out of a plant. And the scientific term for evaporation out of a plant is actually transpiration. So you might see it in some textbooks or online as transpiration. This is the more correct term, but you are fine in calling it evaporation, because evaporation out of a plant is transpiration. And now we've established that plants cannot live in very cold conditions, but what about hot conditions? So we know that some plants are found in the desert. A common one is a cactus or cacti. So hot conditions, how are they adapted? And a big one, just like in animals, is going to be surface area, so SA to volume ratio. Let's just tidy this up. Surface area to volume ratio. So firstly, we're going to have a look at the leaves. So different shaped leaves allow different surface area to volume ratios. And one which is fairly striking is this one here. So it has fairly thin leaves here, but they are very long and they are quite open. And so you might think, well, that's actually a pretty high surface area. However, if you have a look at the effect of what happens after moisture in the air during the night time has come about, the droplets of water that you see on the leaves are collected as a result of the large surface area on the top. It's not too large and it's not too open like this leaf in the bottom right, but they are fairly large in order to collect a lot of water. And so they will funnel water. So they will funnel water for the plant to store and eventually use. Now, this is a striking example, as these curved leaves, they reduce the surface area. And so therefore that stops water being lost by evaporation, or by transpiration if you like. You can also see that the leaves are layered here, so that even less of the surface of the leaf is being exposed to the environment. So that's one way that it keeps water in. And lastly, obviously, a cactus, well, its leaves are pretty non-existent now. They are now spines. So here we go. Here's a cactus, and you can see that these are not really leaves anymore. These are what we know as spines. And because they are so thin and needle-like, it means they have a tiny surface area. So have a tiny surface area, which is of course great for the cactus. And these also protect the cactus from animals, because animals will obviously be looking for whatever food they can find in the desert, and a cactus, which is storing some water, is obviously going to make a good meal. And so these spines stop the cactus being eaten and allow it to survive. Now that is a way of not losing water, but how about just storing water in general? Well, the desert plants are normally going to try and have fleshy leaves in order to store as much water as they can. So for example, this plant down here on the bottom left, it has got these thick fleshy leaves, but is layering them so that the water is not lost. That means it can store more water than a plant with really thin, flimsy leaves. But the best plant for storing water is of course the cactus, because this huge body of the cactus is the stem, whereas other plants have really thin stems. This fat stem allows it to store loads of water in the stem, and there are no leaves. These spines are sort of like the leaves, but obviously low surface area means that way less water is being lost by this cactus than it would be by another leafy plant. Okay, so they are really the main ways in which plants adapt to their environment. You're looking at their roots, you're looking at the shape of them, the way in which they store water, and whether the stomata are allowed to be open or closed. A plant may adapt in a way in which it can close the stomata whenever it wants to maintain water, and then when it's really moist in the air, it will open its stomata in order to take in some more water. So that's another adaptation there. So if you do have any questions, please do feel free to email me using the link or comment in the box below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.